Winning. I've outsmarted you on a number of levels. Beta. Well, actually, King's not. Beta.
That was a hot mess inside a dumpster fire, inside a train wreck.
Keep your mouth shut. I'm going to go in there and slap your face.
You know, we're going to rise like the Phoenix. And
Get in my limousine. Ride on 85. Get in my Learjet. Woo!
Welcome to the Asterisks Collusion podcast. You have the king himself. I'm joined here with my compadre, the Grizz. How are you doing, Grizz?
It's the year of the Grizz.
Isn't it every year the year of the Grizz?
That's right, dudes. It's a miracle that I had the worst luck in fantasy. I feel like maybe I've been talking to Ryan Burns too much, but one year I got to strike gold and hit my first 3 draft picks. But this is the year. But we got an interesting conversation today because we're going to consolidate tight ends, kickers, and defense, and not much to talk about in defense and kickers, but kickers are just boring. Defense is kind of fun to talk about, but that gets into a whole NFL breakdown, and I don't know if we want to get that. That's kind of boring for everybody. But tight ends is a controversy in our league. As you know, we are going to kind of expand on that. And I'm looking at the tiers here for tight ends in fantasy. We have 4 tiers, which we're going to kind of get into, and I don't agree with the tiers as a whole. But as a whole, there's maybe 13 or 14 tight ends worth drafting. And in fantasy as a whole, in my opinion, there's only about 5 or 6 tight ends that you should even be playing in fantasy. So getting one of these that's why they kind of go higher than they should. And I don't want to take a tight end the first 3 rounds, but we typically do because we get scared. Well, how do you feel about that?
I think the tight end position in fantasy, honestly, is a wasted position. If you want to make it an optional position, like a wide receiver, tight end, flex, I think it's fine. Travis Kelce last year was a stud. And that's across the board, not just for tight ends. But after that, there's such a drop off. Really, your second and third best tight ends are no better than number 3 receivers.
And my argument for your what you're saying here is a lot of teams do run 4 wide receiver sets, shotguns, no running back half the time, and if teams are down, they don't put tight ends a whole lot. So if you got a talented one, more traditional sets use the tight end, but that's why I think we should be allowed to have that tight end be a flex position, not use a running back, but have the ability to add a wide receiver there, I think would be huge. And it only adds to points. So I don't see how it could hurt anything. So I'm hoping when we go to the draft this year, maybe people will change, because if that rule does change, I guarantee you how we perceive tight ends will change a great deal in where they get drafted. The only guy I don't think will change too much is Kelce, because like you said, he's kind of like a top 5 wide receiver.
Yeah. He was stud last year. He put up huge numbers. Do you want to get jumping on tight ends now and start talking with them?
I don't want to go through tier 6, 5, or 4, but I thought as a whole, just looking through this, there's a couple names I think are arranged improperly. Like Taysom Hill to me in tier 6, like he's one of those guys that kind of doesn't get drafted and does get drafted, but he's really unique. He's a wide receiver, running back, quarterback, tight end, and I think because of that, he's a guy who should be way higher because he does offer flexibility.
Well, it's funny. Like I had him last year. Through the trade with LTD. Potentially, he should be one of the top 3 tight ends. Honestly,
he's not ranked that way anyway. I think in traditional formats, he's not. I don't know how you really view that, but he's not a tight end. So, but like you said, you had him last year. You liked him. I like him a lot. So, like, do I have him ranked as my top 3 tight end? No, but I'm not going to take him around 3 or 4. But he should not fall out of the top 10 rounds in our league.
No, if New Orleans ever pulled their heads out of their butts and use them like the way he should be, and kind of like this hybrid flex role, a little bit of running back, a little bit of receiver, maybe even like a wildcat and stuff, that's where his value is, and that's where he would go up, in my opinion, top 5, top 3 tight end. But they don't really use him like that, at least not always. But when they do, he plays monster games.
I think he is a polarizing figure, and he's not going to slip in our league because our league's pretty aware of what's going on. You had him last year, and he is probably the most unique player in fantasy from that perspective. And looking at this list, there's some guys on here that are decent players, but Dawson Knox is interesting. Last year at Buffalo, I had him; he disappointed, and now they bring in the rookie Kincaid, and that pretty much kills his value. So Knox is kind of like almost undraftable, maybe late if you feel good about him. Hayden Hurst at Carolina, these guys. I mean, Noah Fant with Seattle. I mean, these are guys who could have, if had chances, never been really, I don't know, amounted to much. Like Fant, I thought was going to be a good tight end in the league. Tyler Conklin with the Jets with Rodgers there, he could have some value possibly. But these are guys you just, I mean, I don't know. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, do you see anybody in here like Mike Krzyzewski is now with New England, and he was good with the Dolphins, but I wouldn't really care about drafting him. Zach Ertz is kind of past his prime.
Yeah.
Who else do you like on between tier 4 and 6?
That's a tough one. Actually, the Denver tight end, Greg Dolchich.
Yeah, he's a hot name right now with
Mhm.
Sean Payton and I think Wilson. But how do you feel him? Do you trust him? Do you think he'll get at least 50, 60 balls?
That's just it. When you're like looking down that low on the tight ends, you're looking at a whole lot of garbage. And I think you really are swinging for upside. And I think he's got that. With Sean Payton there, remember, the tight end they had in New Orleans, that's just Jimmy Graham.
Yeah.
Yes. Huge, numbers there. So Peyton likes the tight ends. So, I mean, with that kind of logic, Dolchitz has some upside. I mean, to be truthfully honest, like if you're looking at like all those other guys that we're mentioning, I think he's got some of the biggest or the best upside out of any of them.
Yeah, I mean, looking at tier 4, 5, and 6, and based on our league, I only see 3 tight ends getting drafted out of these 3 tiers. It's pretty crappy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. I mean, I don't know. I mean, but I'll say this, like I could see like a Dolchich or I don't know, someone else popping out from there, but it's so unlikely. Like when I say popping, I mean like top 5 tight end. And keep in mind, like I said, like if you're and like 3, 4, 5 rank, finish 3, 4, or 5 in the year as tight end, more than likely you're no better than a number 3 receiver. So
yeah. I mean, honestly, for a tight end, we're talking about this a while ago. You looked at Travis Kelce's numbers, then you looked at the second ranked tight end last year. It's like 500 yards apart. So technically,
yeah,
if you get a tight end that scores or has 700, 800 yards, that's pretty good for fantasy, and that's really boring for a wide receiver. So again, that's why let's try to flex that position out, maybe gain some.
Let me ask you this before we keep going. How like for draft strategy, how many tight ends are you going to draft this year? Like realistically?
Oh, on my team in the draft, I'm only taking one. Unless let's just say like I have Travis Kelce, I took him with the first pick, and for some reason, like Evan Ingram fell to me in like round 13. Like, yeah, I would look at him there. I mean, I wouldn't really need him, but like he could be a good flex start. But like I said, like that, you're going to sacrifice a lot by having 2 tight ends in your roster. And, I don't know, man. Like I only like to carry 1 tight end. I think most people in our league do too.
No, I agree. And I mean, I would only carry 1 tight end. Maybe if I get down to like the later rounds, 16, 17, and there's one of these guys that we're talking about still hanging around with like a ton of upside potential, yeah, I might grab him. But maybe more than likely I'm grabbing a rookie running back or third string running back or something.
That's what we do. We're always shooting for upside. Like I would much rather take a flyer like a Cabernet, the running back with out of UCLA was with Seattle. I'd much rather draft him than a tight end like Cole Kmet or something. Like that's what we operate.
No, I agree. I agree. So let's get back on it. Do you want to touch on the tier 3?
So here we have Tyler Higbee, Rams, Kmet with the Bears, David Njoku for the Browns, Dalton Schultz with Houston when that was with the Cowboys, Pat Fryermuth with the Steelers, and Evan Ingram with Jacksonville. This is a kind of an interesting list. You can't sleep on some of these guys. And the interesting one is Cole Kmet. They brought in Tonga with Green Bay, but they just paid him like a top 5 tight end. So that tells fantasy owners, and people, think about this. When a player gets paid that much money, it tells you that they're going to scheme him. So when they brought in Robert Tonyan from the Packers, I was like, oh, maybe they're going to split some balls up. But no, it kind of tells me now that he's going to be a red zone threat and probably get 20, 30 balls. I think Kmet will have a solid year. Will he be a top 10 tight end? I don't know, but I think he will be. Top 5 will be pushing it. But Njoku with Watson, I like him a lot with the Browns. What is a guy you have in this list that you really like?
Well, you mentioned just 2 right there. Njoku's got like that upside. Again, we're going to be talking upside a lot with tight ends until we get to the top few, because that's all it is. You're hoping for a tight end to actually, be worth something. Njoku, if Watson like bounces back and like comes back to his form pre massage parlor days or whatever, Njoku could be a great number 2 target there with the Browns, with Amari Cooper getting a lot of attention.
He's hot. He played good for LTD, I think, in spurts last year. And
yeah,
I think the player I like the most on this list is Evan Ingram, because Jacksonville's hot. They got Riley there, and they got Kirk, and they got a couple other little players there. But Ingram started turning good on. Like, he was kind of hurt with the Giants, but he's a guy who's like a wide receiver more than a tight end, like a true hybrid. And he's a tight end that has potential to get 80, 90 balls. Will he do it? I don't think so, but he has that kind of range. So, I mean, I think he'll probably go pretty high in our league. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go like around 7 or 8.
Let me ask you this. I mean, about Dalton Schultz. In the past few years, he's been like a top 10 fantasy tight end for the Cowboys, but now he's with the Texans. Texans have sucked, but with a rookie, they're garbage. But with a rookie QB, do you think like a security blanket of a reliable tight end like Schultz?
He's a good security blanket, and he's played well. He's a veteran. He's savvy. They have wide receivers that are okay. They're just very young and inexperienced.
Yeah,
I think because of that, Dalton may be one of these guys who's just pure fantasy crap gold. He may just get 5 check down passes every game, like guaranteed 5 catches. He may have 100 catches this year or 50, but he's a guy that could be. Like I said, he's played pretty well in the past, and he's on a team that's much worse, and they're not very good. They're going to be down a lot, so they're going to have to throw a lot.
Exactly.
This it's one of those guys I'm looking at. I'm like, you know what? Like I said, maybe at the end of the draft, and the draft's about to close, Dalton Schultz is if he's sitting there, he may be a Grizz.
I think it could be one of those savvy picks. I mean, like you say, fantasy junk. I mean, he could. Why not? Why can't he get 5 or 6 receptions a game? Maybe a touchdown every couple games. I don't know, but they gotta have someone to throw the ball to, and for the Texans, and I'm not too impressed with the receivers.
Yeah. I mean, Pat Fryermuth's kind of interesting. He's a high draft pick, and I just think he's just another solid player. He didn't have a lot of upside to me. Like, I think he'll kind of be in the range between like 50 and 60 balls. Like, he's just going to be one of those guys you hope he scores a touchdown every week, kind of a guy to me.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's move over to tier 2. Actually, this is probably a little bit bigger names here, and probably a little bit more controversy. Actually,
there's a lot going on in this list. This is a really, really dynamic group of players here.
Oh yeah, if you want to kick that off.
Yeah, we got Darren Waller with the Giants now over from Vegas. Kyle Pitts, the highly touted tight end. from Florida, and that is now his third year with the Atlanta Falcons. Dallas Goedert, who I like a lot, I think is a physical specimen with Philadelphia. George Kittle, Mr. Brittle, with San Francisco. TJ Hawkinson with Minnesota, that came over from Detroit, who played great at the end of last year. And Mark Andrews with the Baltimore Ravens. He had a down year. So let's just start off with Mark Andrews at the top there. How do you feel about him? Because he had a really bad year with Lamar Jackson being kind of out. Where do you put him?
Actually, I'll probably move him down a couple notches. Not in tiers. I mean, he's clearly a tier 2 tight end, but I probably move him closer to I probably put like Kittle and Hawkinson, and of course Kelsey's going to be above him, but like probably more like in the 4th or 5th range. I think Andrews still has the most potential as a lot of the tight ends out there, but it all hinges kind of a little bit on Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's been sketchy as far as his health goes past couple of years. They also brought in ODB, so that might eat into some of his receiving yards, etc. They drafted another receiver, Flowers. So I'm not like super high on Andrews, but
He did have a sick 2021 campaign. Last year down, and I just want to know. I think this will be more of a telltale to see what he really is, because they have brought in wide receivers, and their running back Dobbins is healthy, and they just signed Lamar Jackson to a huge contract. So this is the year we really see what Mark Andrews actually is, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Is there anyone on that list that's jumping out at you like that may supplant Kelsey as the number 1 tight end?
It's a dynamic list. I mean, each player here is very interesting to me. Let's start at the back end. Let's reverse it here. Mr. Darren Waller, he's been a stud tight end in our league for a number of years, and now he's with a new scene. He's got Daniel Jones throwing the ball, got a good ground game with Saquon Barkley. Waller, to me, is a guy who could resurrect his career. I know he's got Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is not going to throw for 5,000 yards, but Waller, to me, is a 1,000-yard tight end. In our league, that says a lot. It depends where his head is at. I mean, Waller may be the best receiver on that roster.
Actually, I would probably argue that he is. But got Daniel Jones throwing him the ball. He's probably he'll be a top 10 tight end, but I don't know where he exactly on that list in that spectrum he'll fall. He could get pretty high up, but he also could just have like an average year of like 800 yards or so.
Yeah, I mean, I like him. Let me put it that way. I mean, I know his head has kind of been all over the place. I think the trade and the new scene in the different spotlight, I think that's going to help him out a lot. I do like Waller. If I, didn't have a tight end in the first few rounds, that's a guy I would heavily consider in the middle rounds.
No, I agree. I mean, can't argue with that.
Then we got Mr. Kyle Pitts. I mean, so this is, I'm going to say here right now, he is not a good fit for the Atlanta Falcons. They are a very physical, run-oriented team.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think he fits what they're doing there, and they've had a lot of changes. And I would not be surprised to see him traded before the season starts.
You always hate seeing like a talented player go into a team that you just know is wrong for them. And this might be the case with Pitts. I still have hope for Pitts. I mean, new quarterback with Ritter. I gotta believe he's gotta do something. If he completely whiffs like he did last year, I would go ahead and just call him a bust at that point.
Remember how hot he was last year? He might have been the hottest player out of any skill position wise. I mean, people wanted him. Everybody wanted Pitts on the roster last year. And Sleeper got him last year in our league. I had him in another league I'm into, and I mean, I cut him after week 4 because he was getting like a catch or two a game, and I think they put him on like the injury reserve for fake injury list, and you know what that was about. Like he got demoted or something. I mean, I'll put it out there. I do not want him on my roster. I wouldn't. There's no way I'm taking him top few rounds. No way.
Oh no, no, I don't think he's going top 3 or 5 rounds. I mean, anyone that takes Pitts in the top 5 rounds, you're a moron, just flat out.
I think it's going to happen.
I mean, you're just not going to do it now. Around round 10, like that's where I'm looking at Pitts. Like, and I mean that. Like, if Pitts is around there around 10 and I don't have a tight end yet, yeah, why not? I might try to do that and see if he can resurrect his career. But
this is a big year for him, and I think if Atlanta's smart, they just trade him. I mean, because like I said, I don't think it's a good fit there. There's 2 or 3 teams who I think he would be excellent with, but
yeah.
I mean, like I said, let's just move on. So neither of us like Pitts. The guy I like a lot is Dallas Goedert. I think Dallas Goedert is just meat and potatoes. If he stays healthy, top 5 tight end, he is like a Kelsey in my opinion. Like let's just say Kelsey retired, they put Goddard in that system in Kansas City. I don't think you see much of a difference. I think he's kind of talented like Kelsey. They just run a different offense there in Philadelphia, but when he's healthy, he plays really well. They let Zach Ertz go a year and a half ago for a reason. And I think Dallas Goedert is a guy who can catch 70, 80 balls and get 1,000 yards as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. Like Goddard could be the guy. I mean, meat and potatoes. And like you say, it's just like when you get down there again, like if he's the fifth best tight end, what does that look like numbers wise for you?
It depends on what your value is and how high the bar is in the draft. And Goddard to me is definitely a top 8 round guy. He's a guy I may sleep on, but I do think he goes by around 5 or 6. I kind of have him slated there, but I don't know if I want to draft him there because, like you said, if there's a running back there like Swift or something with the Philadelphia Eagles, I'd rather take a running back than a tight end. I'm looking at points.
Yeah, got to. Well, let's take a look at TJ Hawkinson, former Detroit Lion, now Minnesota Viking.
I have him as my number 2 tight end, and he was okay with the Lions. It was strange because the Lions were moving the ball and doing good things last year, and then they traded him. Actually, I think Detroit picked up steam after they traded him, and Detroit started playing better ball. And then Hawkinson's numbers with the Vikings started getting better. It was really odd. So, I mean, Hawkins is a really good fit for that team because they have a decent running game. They got Jefferson, so Hawkins is not going to be the focal point. He's going to get checked down. I think Hawkins is a healthy tight end for 90 balls, 1,100 yards, and like 7 or 8 touchdowns. I do trust him.
I'll throw out these numbers for you. Last year, in the 10 weeks he was with Detroit, he totaled 60 catches for 519 yards and 3 TDs.
How many games?
Like 10 games.
Okay.
Or 10 weeks, I should say. That pace would produce 102 catches for 882 yards and 6 TDs over a 17-game season.
I think he'll grow from that, actually. So, like you said, I think he's a safe 80, 90 catches. And he got drafted pretty high, too. He was a highly touted tight end out of Iowa. He will not last long. I think he's definitely gone by round 3 in our league.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right, man. And that is due to the fact people you have to have a tight end starting, which is garbage.
Yeah, I think he's guaranteed to be top 3 in everybody's list, regardless. The other controversy tight end we have in this list is like George Kittle, and he has burned fantasy owners for 3 years straight, I believe. Now he is a guy. I mean, if he's there later, I'll take him. But in terms of where he's actually his ADP is, he's off my board. Like I'm not taking him anywhere near his average draft position. I just don't trust him at all.
Well, you know what? I'm going to make a bold claim here. I'm going to say Kittle actually turns in a not just a top 5 fantasy performance this year. I say he actually trumps Kelsey as top tight end.
That's the thing. He has that physical ability. If he's playing all 17 games, he's exciting. He's fun. He gives it his all, and I think that's where he gets in trouble sometimes, where he plays too hard and then he gets hurt.
Well, a little another stat here for you. In the 10 games he played with Brock Purdy last year, he scored 9 times.
He did look good last year. Now that started making me wonder: is he back? That's the thing. Like he's a guy I've always liked, and I want him on my roster, but I'm
Yeah.
not taking him around 3 or 4. There's just no way. I just don't trust him that much.
Oof. Yeah, I think he's gonna have a great year. And again, I mean, like, and it's just like any other receiver or tight end, like it goes hand in hand. As long as Purdy stays healthy and is the starting quarterback, I'm feeling very confident in Kittle. If that changes, well, then who knows? But yeah, I like Kittle this year. I think he's healthy. I think Purdy at QB, like they got a good connection. I like the chances there.
I mean, it's hard not to like talent, but the other side with me is just like injuries. So it's a love and
Yeah.
hate thing for me. And I just, if I don't trust the player, I typically will just let another team take them, and that's you can get burned in that, but that's fantasy football for you. But
No,
the most intriguing player is Mr. Kelsey.
ah, Mr. Kelsey, Mr. Podcast himself. Him and his brother have that rival podcast to ours. It's not
Yeah.
nearly as good.
Let me ask you a serious question.
Yeah,
And this is the biggest mistake I made last year, is not taking Kelsey round 2, because he fell late last year,
yeah.
and it should not have happened. That was a shocker as well. But he was 33 or turning through 33, and I think we all kind of thought with Tyreek Hill leaving Kansas City and Kelsey getting older, it really turned people off, and almost everybody lost
Mm,
on that. And I was one of those people. I was a doubter. And would you think wrongly of a team if they took Kelsey with the first pick in the Cup this year? Does he have that kind of value to you?
potentially. I mean, like you're playing hot potato though to me. Like I think those worries that we had last year still linger. Like, I mean, he's 33 right now. I mean, at some point, it's got to drop for him. Like, it's like playing a game of musical chairs with Kelsey right now. Someone whoever ends up with him will be left standing, and or 1 year will be left standing when they draft him. Is this the year? I don't know. So I don't, because of that risk, I don't think I'd take him number 1 overall. Like if we were talking about this like a couple years ago, or if he was 30, yeah, I would definitely do it. But
What about
33's,
what about first round? Do you think he's a first round lock?
uh, yes, I think so. I think someone's going to grab him in the first round. Uh, good luck. But my thing is though, like, I'm looking for. I really hate tight ends, but God, I mean, I really do. I mean, what the hell? Like, this league is fucking stupid sometimes. Let's draft players that get 600 yards a game and start them. It's so stupid. But I think like, all right, you got Kelsey. He's going to be a first round lock, I think. I'm just worried his production is going to drop and it'll be back to kind of like he'll be good, like 800 yards, 7 or 8 touchdowns. Who will be one of the elite tight ends? I just don't think he's going to be one of the elite fantasy players, if that makes sense.
Well, it's interesting because he had such a good year last year, and there's such a drop
Yeah.
off after him. And if you draft him round 1, and like let's say I draft Darren Waller round 6, and Darren Waller has a similar season, and say it's like 3 touchdowns less and 100
Yeah.
yards less and 20 catches less, like you would have wished you had Darren Waller in your team. The thing about Kelsey, it's very interesting and polarizing, is you see the chemistry between him and Mahomes still. Like he just looks for him. He seems to be always be open. And I think Kelsey is safe to get over 100 catches, 1,300 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And again, his value is high just because he's the cream of the crop of that position. But how high do you want to get him? Like, I think he could go in the middle of round 1. I just don't know. But that's our tight end positions. I'd like to hear what other people in the league would have to say about that. But there's not a whole lot to say about that. I mean, that is probably the most boring thing in our league, other than defensive and kickers. But Gatos even wants to get rid of defense and kickers, I believe. Didn't he say that?
Yeah, because Gata's just stupid. I mean, let's just be honest. No, I mean, I think defenses and kickers are part of the game, like the real football game. Gatos might never know what that is. But yeah, I mean, I like having defenses and kickers. I mean, if you want to have a discussion on how to, tweaking points for our defense, overall defensive points, that might be a good discussion. But yeah, no, I like having defenses and kickers, especially like if kicker has a great game. I mean, that can be a difference maker.
Defenses to me, I agree with you 100%. It's you look at fantasy football and people get frustrated because defenses can get 3 touchdowns in a game, and when you could have a okay, like say you're having a game in the playoffs, you got 50 points going into like the kicker and defense left, and the other guy's got 100 points. But what if your defense gets 40 points and the kicker gets you 20? That's a lot of points, and people get really pissed about that. But that's football.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens very rarely. But in terms of what do you look for when you draft a defense?
For defense,
Yeah,
well, you can always go by the rankings, but I will say this, like typically when I've drafted the number one defense, number one or number two defense numerous times, and they've never panned out or they've never done as well as their
yeah,
pre-draft rankings suggest.
yeah. There's not like a Baltimore Ravens, Tampa Bay Classic, Chicago Bears defense like this. You don't see that dominance in the league right now.
Nah, I mean, for me, I kind of look for like everyone's gonna look for something different. I look for pass rushers. I feel like getting like if you have a good pass rush, I mean, you're gonna get sack points. I mean, those are always kind of like easy,
Yeah.
easy points, and that usually translate also to turnovers like interceptions, etc. So there's interception points and possibly pick sixes. So that's kind of where I start is like they're looking at teams pass rushers.
Yeah, I kind of think the same way. I'm looking, you're always projecting, but I'm thinking about teams that are good in bad divisions. I'm looking to see if they had a pass rush where they generate sacks, because as we know, sacks translate to turnovers. And I mean, you don't. It's just it's a gamble. But the other thing too is I don't like taking a high defense, like you said, because you get burned. I'd rather have a good defense. Like let's say I can just draft a traditionally a good defense like the Pittsburgh Steelers, probably late in the league, and I don't know where they're going to go. Their team's not that good, but I wouldn't mind having them as my defense for fantasy, drafting them late, and if they don't pan out so well, I can just cut them and pick somebody else up. And the thing about our league is there's always 15 defenses out there. Nobody hardly ever carries 2 defenses.
No, exactly. You just don't have room for it. And I'm kind of the same way. Usually I like pass rushers, but also like first week matchups. Like if you have you're like, oh man, this like someone's playing the I don't know Tampa Bay Bucks, or someone that's going to probably have a pretty weak offense. You maybe pick up their defense, even if they're not slated to be a great defense. And what usually happens, I mean, they might have a good week. You might decide to keep them. But also like teams like you were saying, there's not a way to draft multiple defenses. So there's plenty of good defenses out there. And then you pick another like, oh, maybe this defense, maybe the Giants this year will have a great defense. They're the hot team and they become the number one defense in the league.
It's all about matchups. I mean, I like to even just keep an okay defense and just cut them. And like you see me for years and years and years, I just go in the free agent waiver wire and I try to find a better matchup. And I think we all do that. We don't really look at defenses a whole lot and put much. And the same thing goes for kickers. Like kickers is actually a much easier conversation. I think with kickers, all you look for is a high octane offense. I don't want to draft, let's say the Arizona Cardinals kicker or the Houston Texans kicker. I want, Buffalo Bills kicker. I want Kansas City's kicker, and that's all I'm putting into it. That's the only thought process I ever put into getting a kicker.
Oh yeah, like kickers to me, like I sometimes, like do they kick in a dome or something like that? That crosses my mind. I'm not like, again, I don't look at like who's slated as the best overall kicker. Like that's usually doesn't pan out. I mean,
Justin Tucker.
Yeah, like Justin Tucker. I mean, I'll pass.
Yeah, like, somebody wants them on, go ahead. I just don't. We don't put much thought into it. I think the only thing that's funny in our league, and people need to shut up because, or at least when they're drafting a kicker, pay attention to see if he's on a roster. Ryan Burns. So if you draft a kicker, you stick with it week 1. But yeah, I don't hear people complaining about your kicker getting cut. At least draft a kicker that you know and trust on a good team. It shouldn't be too hard to know football to a certain extent that a kicker should, like the big name like Elliott with the Eagles, like he's going to make the team. Draft a kicker from a decent team and end that. So we've got about everything covered. Anything else you want to add? Like we're going to try to do sleepers on our next podcast. We got a special guest appearance. We got Wednesday Night Football, the Hall of Fame game, and then we have preseason football starting this weekend. What else you got?
Oh man, I think you covered it all. No, looking forward to the next podcast. Hopefully that'll be a little bit more interesting than boring tight ends. Like covering sleepers and our special guests if we didn't just give a hint,
Right, it's going to be epic because we're coming down to the wire. The draft's not too far away. We're going to try to throw some spoilers out there and get the league wound up before the draft. And who knows, maybe we can blow a little smoke, Coop.
Maybe a little smoke, but all I know is we're right, you're wrong. See you later.
All right, adios.